The Big Ten Media Day preseason poll was released on Monday morning by Cleveland.com, and there are a few eye-opening observations that I want to give to you as we go through this 18-team league for the first time, and we're welcoming new members to the Big Ten: Oregon, USC, Washington, UCLA. Where do they rate amongst the legacy Big Ten teams? Is there a program that, judging by this poll, people expect to be good that perhaps we didn't? And then, of course, I want to talk about where Ohio State and Michigan rank and why they would do this. And let's start with that. Let's start with Ohio State being the number one ranked team in this preseason poll. People are picking them to win the Big Ten championship, which is interesting if you are a Michigan fan because you went 15-0 last year. You're the defending champs, and you have beaten Ohio State the last 3 years. As a matter of fact, Ohio State hasn't played in the Big Ten championship in the last 3 years. Ohio State hasn't beaten Michigan since 2019. And yet, and still, many of us believe that Ohio State is positioned to be the best team in the Big Ten Conference. One of the major reasons for that is the talent that Ryan Day was able to assemble in recruiting and in the transfer portal this year. Without hyperbole, this is one of the most talented football teams that Ohio State has ever had, and it is on par with the most talented football team that Urban Meyer ever had. And the one criticism that you might give of Coach Meyer, I think is ludicrous, by the way, is that he should have won more national championships. Okay, sure. I think that right now, this program is built toward winning on November 30th, trying to beat Michigan. But the other reason I think is wildly underrated for why Ohio State is the best team in the country coming into the season and in the Big Ten is, frankly, think about Connor Stallions. Think about what Michigan was able to do the last 3 years. Most folks would like to point out that, yeah, they were caught cheating. They were caught stealing signals in a way that is unfair for the last 3+ years. And they've been on a tear through those 3 years. But A, when they were made to put all that down, they still ran right through people. B, Jim Harbaugh was suspended for half the season and yet still led that team to a 15-0 regular national championship, their first national championships in 1997. But underrated here is helmet-to-headset communication, okay? You no longer have to signal anything. If you don't want to, you will be able to talk directly to your offensive captain, quarterback, and your defensive captain. And that's going to change everything for Ohio State. They no longer have to worry about anybody, let alone Michigan, stealing their signals. They're just going to be able to go at warp speed with Chip Kelly's offense. And I don't know how many people have actually given that thought. It's one of the things that's been on my brain since that new legislation was put on, right? I wrote about this at foxsports.com, but the point to be made there is that one. The way in which Michigan was able to win, let's say for the last 2.5 years, because that half year when Stallions was forced to go out and they got sanctioned and whatnot. Well, it's not sanctioned. They got reprimanded. And then Jim Harbaugh got suspended. They've had to deal with that. They've had to deal with people trying to steal their signals, and perhaps that has been one of the reasons that they have lost the game each of the last 3 years and haven't won against Michigan since 2019. Number two, not surprising to me, surprising to some, one of the new members to the Big Ten, Oregon Ducks, Dan Lanning is in a great position, okay? He's got Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. He's got Will Steinbach as his offensive coordinator, who turned Bo Nix into a 4,000-yard, 40 TD, 4 INT passer, Heisman-level season, and Dylan Gabriel has the same amount of talent as Bo Nix. He's also added Evan Stewart to a wide receiving core that lost Troy Franklin, along with Tez Johnson. Jordan James, I expect to be really good. Noah Whittington, I expect to be really good. I guess the other part about this that I find attractive about Oregon is they get Ohio State in Eugene this year. And the last time that Oregon played Ohio State in Columbus, granted it was Mario Cristobal, a totally different staff, they were able to get a win, but they were able to also get a win without Kayvon Thibodeau on the field, who at the time was one of the best defensive players in football, and it felt like C.J. Verdell was able to run wild on that defense. The defense has gotten really that much better at Ohio State, but I think that Oregon is balanced on offense and defense, and they are ready for the challenge, unlike any other of the new members, I think, that are coming into the Big Ten to play for the first time. The next team that we got to talk about is actually not Michigan. It's Penn State. Big Ten voters in this media poll really are thinking that Penn State is going to get past it. They're going to get over the hump. Now, a lot of this, I think, comes from a couple of things. The first is they don't have to play Ohio State and Michigan this year, and that's the first time they haven't had to do that in quite some time. And then I'm reminding myself that the way in which Penn State fans view their season is not unlike the way Ohio State and Michigan fans view their season. I'm looking at Penn State, and I know that Drew Aller has got to be a big deal. I know that Nick Singleton has to be a big deal. I know that Katron Allen has to be a big deal if you're going to finish in the top three. Where you're ranked right now. Top three of the Big Ten championship race. But way I look at this is James Franklin's a good coach. I know he's a good coach because he managed to win 9 wins in back-to-back seasons at Vanderbilt. I don't know that anybody else has been able to have that sort of success. And if you drop, let's say, Urban Meyer into Vanderbilt, would they turn into a winner? It's possible, right? But that would mean you're dropping in one of the great football coaches we've had in the sport into one of the historically bad football programs we've had in the sport. But given that Ohio State and Michigan have received all of the Big Ten invitations to the CFP, and given that USC is coming in Oregon, I feel like many people are looking at the roster at Penn State and have decided that it is not only worthwhile, but that the addition of Andy Kotelnicki as the offensive coordinator and Tom Allen as the defensive coordinator and Julian Fleming at wide receiver should give them everything they need to get over the hump. This is a program that has played in a couple of Rose Bowls here, but at the bottom of that, Penn State is 4-20 in the James Franklin era against Ohio State and Michigan, with just one of those wins coming against the Buckeyes. Again, they had them dead to rights a couple years ago, a couple years ago, and JT Tuimoloau decided, no, you don't. I'm going to have one of the great defensive performances that anybody's ever had, regardless of what uniform they're wearing. I'm curious to find out just what it means for Penn State to go into this thing expected to finish ahead of Michigan. Michigan rated in number 4 here. Michigan fans have been going, would somebody treat us with the proper amount of respect? Would somebody please recognize that we are the defending national champions? And it's like, yeah, we do, but we don't think you're as talented. Your head coach has changed. Your entire defensive staff is gone. You've got a new guy at quarterback. You're asking Donovan Edwards to produce at a level that he's never had to before. We got our reservations, to which Michigan fans would be right to say, you have your reservations every year. We have never had the most talented team in the country, according to the 247 talent composite. We don't recruit to win the recruiting national championship, right? We're going to be in the top 10. We might even crack the top 5, but we're going to get our guys. We're going to be built around the offensive line and the defensive line. We're going to control the ball, and we're going to take the ball back, and we're going to let our offense continue to do what it does so that the defense can be, shall we say, not compatible, but balanced, right? I think with Will Johnson on that end, you're also in a good spot. Losing Rod Moore on the back end is going to hurt, and Lord knows that Sherrone Moore is coming into a season where he's got to try to do something Jim Harbaugh didn't have to do, which is get past a pretty salty non-conference schedule that is highlighted by Texas coming to Ann Arbor. I think if Michigan is able to beat Texas, we're going to look back at this ranking at number 4, and we're going to be like, okay, that might not be one of the 4 best teams. It might be one of the 2 best teams. It might be one of the 3 best teams. There's just lots to pick out there in layers. On number 5, again, kind of a shocker, Iowa, right? Iowa is ridiculously good defensively and hadn't really shown a post offensively. Now, you hire Tim Lester. You probably are going to get a better quarterback play because Cade McNamara, I hope, can stay healthy. But outside of that, I think that Iowa being ranked ahead of, say, USC, who's at number 6, or even Wisconsin at number 7, you're thinking a lot there. And one of the cool ones I think that we're going to talk about here throughout the week that I saw is Nebraska's rated inside the top half of this. I think Nebraska fans will take this for now, right? Now, Nebraska fans are like Oklahoma fans. We had some tradition. We expect to be good. The difference between Nebraska and Oklahoma is Oklahoma's kept up its end of being good, and Nebraska's coming off a 5-7 season. Now, granted, if they won any one of their 4 last games, they would have been bowl eligible for the first time since 2016. But looking at what Matt Rule has done in year 2, which is go bowling everywhere he's been, Temple and Baylor, looking at what Dylan Raiola means to their offense, you're going to go from perhaps the worst turnover margin. No, you had the worst turnover margin among Power 5 teams last year at -17 and the worst in the Big Ten because quarterbacks couldn't really hold on to the ball like Jeff Sims. Dylan Raiola can do that. Maybe you get a few other wins. Rutgers at number 9, also really fun because Rutgers, a perennial bottom dweller, looks like they got a squad this year led by Kyle Monagai, and for whatever reason, Greg Schiano can make it happen in Piscataway, and they got a schedule that lends itself to them being good. And I think they're one team that I want to point out just right fast at the bottom is the one that, frankly, I think's got the most to be mad about. I think the Purdue Boilermakers picked to finish dead last. I think you're underestimating what Hudson Card might be able to do. I also think you're underestimating what Ryan Walters can do. But more than that, they've got a pretty damn good safety in Dylan Thieneman that I think you're all going to find out about. But 18 seems dead last seems wrong, right? Indiana at 18, probably. But Indiana's at 17. And then we have not Arizona. I'm looking at Washington and I'm going, why do we not think that Washington is going to be great? And then I remember, oh yeah, that's nothing like the team that we saw last year because that team basically was torn asunder when Kalen DeVore took that job at Alabama and a lot of other people came with him. But being ranked at number 10, still a pretty good look for Jed Fish and Will Rogers going into this first foray of Big Ten play.